as we understand the Epstein case, we believe it to be a Mossad operation, that he was an agent of Mossad. He was compromising powerful American, British politicians, industrialists, in order for them to do what they wanted for Mossad intelligence. But Pottinger wasn't Mossad. Was he American-based? And how does that relationship work?
Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein had links with Mossad because he was obviously, and this has to be said, right? This is from my research and this is my opinion, but it's not the most popular opinion when you actually get into the researchers, because a lot of people are pushing out the Mossad line, and I don't believe it. The evidence always leads back to the CIA, and he seems to be running the East Coast for the CIA. So Mossad people, so Mossad people who want to do anything on the East Coast have got to go to Epstein and get permission from the king to do that on their territory.
So he was the gatekeeper for Mossad on the East Coast of America?
Not only for Mossad, he's a gatekeeper for nearly all CIA intelligence operations.
Right, okay.
So the fact is, people are trying to give this image that he's just running sexual compromise operations. He's meeting with really extremely high-level operatives who are obviously now, if you
neocon CIA operatives?
Yeah, CIA operatives hide under all guises and all ideologies, and the CIA is recruiting more and more. The growth of intelligence infrastructure is just going up exponentially. Everybody says, oh, he was just this or just that, but so many this, that. What? Financier, he's a real estate, he's into this, he's a scientist, he's everything. He's doing everything all the time. It does not make sense. No, he's involved in everything because he's the guy who gets everybody to do their bits. He's the guy who organizes. He's the guy who coordinates. He's the guy who links. He's the guy who says, yeah, I'll find out if you can do that for my guys who are the Central Intelligence Agency. And if people label him as mainly Mossad, or he was only working for Mossad, what difference does that make? It stops people straight away from holding the CIA accountable.
But is that where Operation Condor can be applied to that situation?
Exactly, yeah. So there's two intelligence networks running, and every time that you want to spy domestically or carry out intelligence operations domestically on either one of these countries, say probably you could say about the Five Eyes and Israel, they basically help each other out. They've become the same. They become tentacles of the same octopus.
So MI6 would spy on USA, and MI6 would then give that information to CIA.
You wouldn't even have to do much of that. You just have like a CIA spying on American soil, which is the main problem. Well, British spying on Britain, and then blaming the Americans for doing it, or blaming the thing.
Just blame,
you just have to say, oh look, that person who did that had links to Mossad, so it means it was Israel who was doing it, wasn't it? Because it's links to Mossad.
So this Pottinger character seems to stride over things like Operation Condor and all of these kind of CIA operations.
He's developing them. I think they saw in Operation Condor a brilliant way to avoid accountability in the future. The reason why George H.W. Bush was so desperate to learn more about Operation Condor was that they would be able to use that. And what happens just after that period, 1976, Pottinger sorts out this with Eugene Proper and George H.W. Bush in a meeting in CIA Central, 1977, Carter gets in. Pottinger is a Republican. He's been in two Republican administrations. He's been in Nixon and Ford. Carter gets in. He's allowed to stay in to finish covering up Watergate because, of course, that's exactly what you'd allow Pottinger to stay on for. So he stays on for a special advisor through part of 1977, goes off, then works for some amazing cases, including one against the king of blackmail, Occidental Petroleum's Armand Hammer. The king of the blackmailers gets taken on and destroyed by Pottinger. And there's this story about how Armand Hammer's, that's brought up apparently in court, where Armand Hammer's on his knees with two KGB agents in a hotel in Russia, and someone walks in on him, and Pottinger's telling this story to people. So there's this time where he's doing these really interesting other things. But what happens just afterwards, in 1980, he starts defending Gerald Bull with the space research stuff, which is illegal arms smuggling to South Africa while while it's got apartheid regime and it's got sanctions on there. And so he's defending Gerald Bull. In the same year, he is involved with smuggling weapons to Iran. Pottinger himself arranges with one of his clients of his law firm and business partner, because he had $100,000 in this guy's bank, Cyrus Hashemi. Cyrus Hashemi and his brother Jamshid Hashemi had a really terrible reputation for being extremely naughty boys. And Pottinger basically and Cyrus Hashemi offered themselves to the CIA, to the American infrastructure, to get the release of the hostages in Iran during the Iranian embassy siege, but at the same time use it to mold the October surprise, which would see Ronald Reagan and Pottinger's mate George H.W. Bush take office and supply arms to Iran with deals in the background. Or if you do this and hold those hostages.
These are all the key events in modern history, isn't it?
And that event cannot be understated how central he is to Iran-Contra and how important that is to see, because that's Pottinger when he's just balls out CIA running guns. And who else is involved in that? Who starts funding it right at the beginning? It's in One Nation Under Blackmail. Jeffrey Epstein's there financing parts of Iran-Contra, where he's pushing on Adnan Khashoggi, who's also doing arms smuggling, who's in business with Cyrus Hashemi.
Would you say that's the beginning of Epstein's relationship with Pottinger? Is that during the Iran arms Contra?
They may have met some time before. That's very likely. There's very likely that there's a lot of parties these guys are attending together. But there's 2 points. And number one, Pottinger himself later admits to Bradley Edwards, written in Relentless Pursuit, Bradley Edwards' book. He says, Pottinger admits to him that he shared an office with Jeffrey Epstein in the early 80s. And this is during the period when he's running guns in the same program as Jeffrey Epstein for the CIA. Jeffrey Epstein for the CIA. Stanley Pottinger for the CIA. Cyrus Hashemi and Adnan Khashoggi both it doesn't end well for them. After 6-7 years, I think it was 1986 where Cyrus Hashemi dies of a very fast-acting leukemia, which was obviously something to do with
Russian poison.
Working with the CIA. But what's even worse for Pottinger is in 1984, all of this is exposed because the FBI was so suspicious of what was going on, and they didn't know what the CIA was doing, and they didn't know about the October surprise, and they wouldn't have agreed with the October surprise because, of course, it's one side. It's about the Republicans gaining office. By 1984, the FBI revealed that they wiretapped Cyrus Hashemi's office and been listening to all Pottinger's conversations with him and were considering indicting him.
Indicting Pottinger?
Yeah, and Rudy Giuliani comes along and says, "Oh well, we're looking at him, and we'll
as the New York mayor."
No, but when he was I
DA.
He was an attorney. He was, or he was an, I don't know if he was.
He was a district attorney in New York because he brought down the mafia.
Basically, he moves off to Mexico really quickly. Pottinger hides out, 1984, 1985. His relationship with the CIA darling Gloria Steinem ends in 1984. She runs off with industrialist Mort Zuckerman. But he had gone out with that CIA lovey since 1974 to 1984. That was 10 years where she, before she had run loads of various different CIA operations and admitted to working for the CIA, knowingly working for the CIA, and said, "Oh, well, it's just, we were only doing good things. I've never seen them do anything bad." So, she was just like off of this elite that believes the CIA were only doing good things. But they were in it for themselves, for their own financial gain. Because during this period as well, and this is what really should be questioned, because this is where the kicker is, Stanley Pottinger during this period is making the bulk of his money. He's claiming it's in investment banking. At the same time, he's smuggling guns and causing political coups of America. I mean, the October surprise caused a coup. That's a coup. That was Reagan and George H.W. Bush taking power. Probably less Reagan, who was like walking around going, and George H.W. Bush. So it's probably more George H.W. Bush. Just that was more the takeover of the CIA. And it leads to a question. Since JFK got shot in the head, when have the CIA not been in charge of America?
George Bush was the beginning of this entire crime spree we've seen, right through all of the presidents, maybe with the exception of Trump, but all of the others seem to be well connected through the whole Bush crime family. You can connect them all.
Yeah.
So that was the coup when the CIA took power in America. Well, this dynasty, if you like, were the ones that, took over from whoever was running it before them.
Yeah. And really, it was obviously the CIA, the history of the CIA and the rise of the CIA really just coincides with the rise of the CFR and the Council on Foreign Relations. And they're obviously linked in some way. When the CFR does something, the CIA are their hand, especially through the 60s and 70s. This changes later on in certain aspects, like color revolutions. It becomes this is CIA's old jobs that they used to get in trouble for.
The economic hitman through John Perkins' stuff.
That job got taken over by things like National Endowment for Democracy, USAID, and all these NGOs.
But that's clever the way they did that, because they didn't want the CIA to be obviously the ones that were conducting these coups in these countries, using World Bank's money to enslave them through debt. So they got corporations in front of the CIA to go in and, get them to take these enormous loans that they would give to American companies to do the work. But the reality was, behind the scenes, the CIA were pulling the strings.
Yeah,
because
CIA.
they first developed it in Iran.
There's a lot's been developed in Iran.